Intersectionality is the theory of how different identity factors overlap and how different systems of discrimination are related to these factors. So what does this really mean? These wonderful words of Kimberly Crenshaw, the mother of intersectionality. What does it mean that our identity factors overlap? So to sort of illustrate what I mean with this, I hope that you'll indulge me in participating in a small exercise. So this is where you guys get to be a bit active. You don't have to stand up or anything. What I want you to do right now is to pick 3 identity factors that society puts on you. And I'm thinking about stuff like your nationality, your gender identity, your place of birth, something like that. So think about 3 identity factors about yourself. I'll give you a couple of seconds to do this. Think about it. To sort of illustrate what I mean, I can help you with some examples. If I had to pick 3 identity factors about myself, I'd say I'm the son of Pakistani parents, I'm a Muslim man, and I have a boyfriend named David. So pick your 3 identity factors. You should be done by now. Hold on to them, because I promise we'll get back to them. Maybe some of you are wondering about my identity factors. Pakistani, Muslim, and that boyfriend named David. How does that work out for me? Those aren't really categories that would traditionally mix very well. I'll tell you this much, it's been tough on my mother. She's never been quite as impressed as I thought she'd be about me bringing home an engineer. Mom, he's an engineer, come on. Every South Asian mother's secret fantasy is to have either a doctor, a lawyer, or maybe an engineer in the family. Joking aside, I shattered many dreams for my mother. I grew up as a minority in Denmark, and from a very early age, I've known how to answer when people would ask me where I'm from, what religion my family practices, and why we don't eat pork. I grew up in a home where I was taught the teachings of the Quran. I went to Urdu school on Mondays, and I was forced to join the local cricket team in the tiny town of Albertslund where I grew up. So all of these things made me terribly aware of how I was different and who wants to be different when they're young. Your peers in society will categorize you all throughout life. We're put in boxes. In some boxes you get to pick yourself, and others are chosen for you. In my youth, I had to come to terms with a fact that I had been fighting, avoiding, and praying to go away all my life. The fact that I was gay. I knew that this would result in controversy and conflict, and I was right about that part. That was often the reality of my youth. So I kept it to myself. I kept it hidden so deep inside me that I often didn't even know of how to utter the words of who I was. I believed the myth that society had created for me, that my mix of identity factors were an impossibility, that there is an inherent contradiction between being Muslim and gay, an explosive cocktail that can't mix. After all, what 2 things are more different than being gay and Muslim? That is what the world would have me believe. But I wouldn't be standing here today if I didn't believe that that wasn't true. I had to take charge of my own narrative. I remember someone once asking me that if the punishment for stealing in Islam is having your hand cut off, what is the actual punishment for being gay? I had to answer that my punishment was a lifetime of having to answer stupid questions. I'm done answering stupid questions. But I might also be done calling people out. I've come to terms with the fact that I'm on a lifelong mission, that if people are to understand the world with all the intersections it holds, people like me will have to help you guys out. And in return, I hope that you will listen with empathy, and respect, because I promise you it'll make sense in the end. In a world of breaking binaries where we want to go beyond the constructs of gender and sexuality, using long acronyms like LGBTQIA can make perfect sense. There once was a time where I had to learn it too. There was a time where my life was perfectly invisible. There were no shows on TV, no stories in books, no older version of me that I could mirror myself in. So love, relationships, marriage, a home, what would a version of that where the main character is a gay Muslim man look like? Taking hold of my own narrative has been a collective effort of the community I belong to. A community that I'm partially the creator of. 13 years ago, I co-founded Sabah, Denmark's only organization for LGBT ethnic minorities. And we started out being an organization for gay Muslim immigrants. And if you sort of taste the words, you can sense that saying ethnic minority LGBT persons has a far more palatable version of inclusivity in it. And during these 13 years, we've helped to break down taboo and create room for self-love where there once was conflict, hurt, and hate. A proud moment for me was the recent reconciliation of parents with their children with the establishment of our parent support group. Parents who now fully support their children for who they are marched at the very front of the Pride Parade this summer. Now that was a milestone for many reasons. During these 13 years, we've seen some incredible changes in Danish society and in the world at large. The year 2017 saw the legalization of same-sex marriage in 15 different countries like Germany, Australia, Malta, Mexico, and the US. Denmark introduced Christian church weddings for same-sex couples in 2012. And in my parents' home country, Pakistan's transgender community helped along issuing its first passport with a transgender category in it. A step in the way of recognizing the transgender community as an equal part of society. These are all steps in the right direction. And I now see how LGBT rolls off people's tongues. Journalists and middle school students know exactly what it is and how to say it. It's a word that has made invisible lies far more visible. It has made room for new and complex ways of thinking and talking about the human identity. But there is a pushback on these developments as well. When it comes to the rights of minorities, have we come too far? It's a notion that seems to be growing these days that when it comes to the rights of minorities, things have been taken too far, to an extreme. After all, if we're all equal, why do we, the gender-fluid LGBT community, insist on using pronouns and acronyms that sets us apart? After all, aren't we all merely human beings? Pushing this sort of narrative is a revival of political traditionalism and nationalism, one where the majority identity is supreme. They argue that the rights of minorities should not dictate the framework of society. And I see these movements represented by Canadian psychologist Jordan Peterson. He rallies millions of people that center around an opposition to political correctness. Around the world, a new cultural era is blooming as well. It is one that views liberal values as an attack on faith, family, tradition, and national pride. In Turkey, which is among the very few Muslim countries in the world with blooming activism, we've seen a crackdown on pride over the last few years. These movements of tradition would have you believe that a focus on a majority identity will bring us all together, since words in the LGBT thesaurus will only help divide us further. After all, aren't we all merely human beings? And this is where I say no. Merely human being would erase the myriad of factors that altogether make up a full human identity. Merely human being is a category that is often reserved for the majority, one that would entail whiteness, capability, and heteronormativity. Yes, I am a human being, and you are too, but my full human identity holds a series of categories that make up a ever-changing human experience. Speaking of human experience, let's get back to your identity factors. So I hope you remember them. Your 3 identity factors. What I want you to do right now is to erase 2 of your factors, so you only get to keep 1. So 1 identity factor to make up your human identity. And how you do this is entirely up to you. You can keep the one that is most important to you. You don't have to share them with your partners today. Just narrow down your 3 identity factors to 1. Are you guys done? Okay, good. All right. So if you were able to do this, some of you might feel okay with this. But I bet the vast majority of you guys out there, for you, it probably feels pretty confining. 1 identity factor to define who you are. Now, how is that supposed to work for the LGBT community? For queer people of color, for me, gay, Muslim, or merely human being, why erase the intersections of my identity? Doing workshops and doing this sort of exercise, I often have women stumbling over the hard fact of having to choose between their personal or professional identity. Am I a mother or a university professor? Pick one. Yes, our identities are determined by context and society puts us in boxes, but who we are as people is surely more than just that one thing. Who we are is a result of that ever-evolving thought process that aims to answer the question, who are you? So getting to a place of equality, of fluidity beyond gender and sexuality can seem complex. But creating room for marginalized peoples require symbols, words, and acronyms. What we don't have a language for simply doesn't exist. And yes, I admit things can seem complex. In a world where Facebook offers more than 58 possibilities of gender identification, and there are more versions of the rainbow flag that I can even sometimes name or remember, there are an enormous amounts of names, words, and symbols to learn. But the payoff from learning this language is huge. It holds a promise of freedom that goes beyond my own community. And in doing so, we allow people to flourish. When people have a space to enter the world as they truly are, to define who you really are, you're able to enter the world as an equal. Symbols, words, and acronyms have the power to set you free. And I have seen it happen time and time again. When we challenge the norms that will confine what a real man is, who a real woman is, what it means to be Danish or Muslim, we're confining a set of constructs that confine us all. Norms that would dictate that anger is an inherently male characteristic, that tears are a sign of weakness that does not befit a heterosexual male, essentially meaning that society's lack of space for men to show any sign of weakness has them dying off at an earlier age than women. Now, how are we okay with this? How are you supposed to be okay with that one box society would have you fit into? Yes, we have come far, but we are far from the finishing line. When it comes to the rights of minorities, progress is not a straight line where we can say we have arrived. Rights we have gained today can be taken back tomorrow. And I'm not here to tell you that your gender is over. You still get to be you with more factors of identity than the 3 you got to pick right now. But consider looking through the spectrum of gender and sexuality. I promise you that what initially gave a minority like me more freedom to begin with can also help you gain more freedom too. And in your defense of me, you might actually end up defending yourself. Thank you.